There are two primary schools of thoughts in philosophy: the rationalism and empiricism. The view that reason is the primary source of all knowledge and that only our reasoning abilities can enable us to understand sense experience and reach accurate conclusions. This is called rationalism. The view that sense experience is the primary source of all knowledge and that only careful attention to sense experience can enable us to understand the world and achieve accurate conclusions is called empiricism. Concerning the theory of the philosophical perspective of the self, one can look at the self by studying how these schools of thought in philosophy affect me as a person or individual. Hence, in this lesson, it is expected that students have a deep understanding or mastery of the philosophy of the human person. Socrates. One of the most important things that one should not forget in Socrates' philosophy is the Socratic method or the dialectical. This method would mean a new way of examining what we think. Though he had many followers, such as Plato, Cebes, etc., he was degraded and persecuted by the sophists to death on charges of corrupting the young people's minds on society's destabilization. The unexamined life is not worth living. But what does examination of life mean? For him, knowledge is the highest form of wisdom, that is, the good. And the evil lacks understanding and knowledge, that is, ignorance. Therefore, knowledge is inseparable with morality, that is, the reason for continually examining oneself. Plato. Everything in this world is a shadow of its ideal form in the world of ideas. What is more critical for Plato's philosophy is that of an individual's mind, because this is the only absolute that perfects man's nature. How does this happen? There must be a world of ideas. This world is a world of concept that is unchangeable, and this is separate from the material world. According to Plato, the world that we are living in is the world of sense. For example, the fruit apple concept. Although there are varieties of an apple in the world of the senses, once the apple is not physically present, it exists in mind. Therefore, the world of the reasons is the shadow of the world of ideas, because the one perceives only through experience, so the act of perception to something is imperfect. Plato argues that a human being has been dividing into two parts, the body and the soul. The psyche or the soul possesses reason for which one can perceive the realm of ideas, while the agency has to distinguish sense in the material world. The psyche or the soul possesses reasons for which one can perceive the realm of ideas, while the agency has to distinguish sense in the material world. Why is Plato considering the world of ideas as the real world? Precisely because the psyche or the soul's concept comprises three elements that he has characterized as reason, appetite, and spirit or passion. The psyche is the totality of the whole self. René Descartes, the founder of modern philosophy. Man exists if he thinks. Sometimes evil persuades a man in making him believe that there are things to be false, although there is nothing of which for a man that he can be sure. But he can only be satisfied when he says, I am, I exist, precisely because man is rational by nature. I think, therefore I am. His philosophical tool starts from his book Meditation on the First Philosophy. The focal content of this book is on the I. According to Descartes, at least once in your life, you have to doubt because it is the only way to seek after truth. But one should not be alarmed about questioning. Sometimes, one should ask why we need to follow the state of affairs law. If we want to exist, we have to ask questions and reason according to the truth. To question something is not by having faith, but having a rock-solid belief, having a solid foundation of personal philosophy in life. In Meditation 2, De cogito ergo sum, that is the first principle of Descartes' theory of knowledge because this comprises the whole self as being aware of the self. This is the key to personal identity. Having this identity is an integral part of self-consciousness. These two are mutually dependent on one another. In other words, they are inseparable. His approach is very Platonic for one of the psyche's attributes, or the soul is thinking. And this is the only tangible thing that is undeniable from the self. Therefore, by answering the question, what am I? Then, the I, as me, is a thinking thing. The same principle with Plato. Descartes has been distinguished the self as a thinking entity with the self as a physical body. The thinking soul is immortal, independent of the physical laws of the universe, and conscious. In contrast, the physical body is a mortal, material, non-thinking entity. It depends on the physical requirements of the world. Whether the physical body likes it or not, it is bound to it. Therefore, Plato and Descartes share the philosophy in terms of the physical dualistic view of reality. John Locke. No man's knowledge can go beyond his experience. Innate ideas mean inborn ideas. One has already acquired knowledge, self-knowledge, before experience. According to Locke, there are no truths found in everyone at birth, even in cultures. David Hume. Hume becomes skeptical about the problem of knowing where he forcibly against the idea that humans were born with innate ideas. The essential thought that one can gain ideas about Hume's philosophy is that the human mind is of two kinds of phenomena: the impression and the ideas. The term impression or direct perception is sensations, passions, and emotions, whereas the characteristics that are soft copies of our beliefs, such as thoughts, reflections, and imaginings. One has the ideas that cannot be supported by our impressions. Therefore, it is that one should understand Hume's contention concerning rationalism that there are only two kinds of statements that one should consider, namely, demonstrative and probable. For example, 2 plus 2 equals 4. One cannot understand this statement without a priori knowledge concerning it. In other words, one cannot know something about things to be true or false without knowledge before it. On the contrary, a probable statement, one has to come to know about something to be true or false through confirmation. For example, John is playing Mobile Legends. If John is playing ML, one will go and see John if he is playing that game. Therefore, through investigation, experimentation, etc., are proofs to confirm whether they are truth or falsity. Immanuel Kant. Direct sensibility, that is intuition. An example of this is when one is holding a thing, such as a book or any. The other aspect of knowledge that comes indirectly from the human's viewpoint understanding is the concepts aspect. For example, seeing the reader in mind as a concept and knowing the book in itself as a substance. In other words, one understands what the book is and its significance. But Kant's assertions that both reason and experience are necessary to understand the world. In other words, for an individual to know about his beingness, that is the self, one must be acquainted with both rationalists' and empiricists' belief. This is called transcendental idealism. Therefore, there is a unity of consciousness. Sigmund Freud. Understanding the self requires consciousness, and it has three levels of awareness: conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. The conscious level consists of all things that we are aware of, such as things that one knows about themselves and their surroundings. The preconscious level consists of one's attention that is being desired and reminiscing of memories that are easy to retrieve. The unconscious level consists of things that one is not aware of their surroundings. For example, thoughts that are unpleasant and conflicting, such as sexual impulses, etc. The psychic apparatus of the self. The id, which is instinct, ego, that is reality, and superego, morality. Gilbert Ryle. Many thinkers regard his philosophical theory on the mind concept as an immaterial mind or dissolved, and the soul as a non-material substance. The mind-body problem is called a category mistake. He considered the body as a machine, while the mind or the soul was the machine's ghost. Paul and Patricia Churchland. To understand the mind, we have to understand the brain. This is the theory of dualism. The mind and the body are separated. Therefore, our self is our brain. Merleau-Ponty. Mind or consciousness cannot be defined formally in terms of self-knowledge or representation, but is essentially engaged in the human world's structures and actions and encompasses all of the diverse intentional orientations of human life.